9:04 here at the all-new 99.7 Wilbur Radio. Good morning to you. It is our candidate debate, live and in studio, for the 102nd Legislative District in the Republican primary, which will be taking place this coming Tuesday. And I am pleased to welcome into the studio incumbent State Representative Russ Diamond. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And also your opponent in this primary, Elko School Director Rachel Moyer. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Laura.
Thank you both for agreeing to be here today. This is, I think, a very important thing that we do for the citizens of Lebanon County and especially for the Republican voters of the 102nd District who will be voting in the primary coming up on Tuesday, or maybe have already done so with some of the early voting. So we are going to talk about the issues today and gauge your feelings on some of the issues for the questions that I have compiled. I am the only person who has written these questions. I haven't gotten input from anybody else in formulating these questions. Our format for today, as you are aware, candidates, you will each be given a 60-second opening statement in which you may use prepared notes if you choose. We'll then move into the questioning portion, and you'll have 60 seconds to respond to the questions. After both of you respond, there will be additional time if either of you wants to rebut or refute what your opponent has said. You'll get an additional 60 seconds for that rebuttal. And then we'll go to closing statements. And again, you can use prepared notes if you want to do so in your closing statements. So having given you the lay of the land, let's begin with our opening statements, 60 seconds. And we'll start with the challenger in this debate, Elko School Director Rachel Moyer.
So I'm a pastor's wife, mom of two young boys, retired X-ray CT MRI technologist, a leader of a conservative grassroots group, and as you said, an Elko School Board Director. I have a deep commitment to our conservative Christian and Republican values. Because of this commitment and to protect these values, I've entered this race for state representative. My interest in serving as state representative stems from a career in public service. I feel strongly that we must have elected officials who continue to be the people's voice. As a lifelong conservative, both politically and as a way of life, I have the necessary skills and values to bring integrity to the office of the state representative of the 102nd District. I believe that elected officials should be the voice for the people, and I strive for that myself as a local elected official. In the last 3 years, I've been able to see how our local and state governments work, especially in relation to the school district. And everything that happens on the state level can actively affect the local level. I've seen how some elected officials say they're for conservative values, but then say or do the opposite of those values. And our district deserves someone who will stand for truth.
Thank you very much, Director Moyer. And now with an opening statement, Representative Russ Diamond.
Well, good morning. This is a tale of two candidates. I'm a lifelong Lebanon Countian who spoke the truth about the most popular or powerful people in Pennsylvania in 2005 and changed our state for the better. In 2014, I spoke the truth about the most powerful people in Lebanon County and earned a seat in the General Assembly. And in 2020, I spoke the truth about Tom Wolf's COVID lockdowns and changed Pennsylvania for the better again. My opponent only moved here a few years ago and is deceptive about her own background. She's endorsed by a convicted felon, a known con man, and a failed statewide candidate who put her up to running a sour grapes campaign because I spoke the truth about him as well. She's misconstrued my legislative record and trafficked in gossip that was debunked long before she moved here. She's taken the low road because her own record as a school director is not conservative. She's never voted against increasing spending or taxes, and she led the charge to promote transgenderism in official school policy. I look forward to this discussion.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Representative Diamond. We'll now move into our questioning portion. And normally with the questions, I usually go alphabetical by last name, and that means that Representative Diamond, you will get the first question. Let's talk about some of the comments made by each of you in this campaign, on the air, online, in mailers, starting with your self-identification. Representative Diamond, clearly since 2015, your profession has been as a state lawmaker. However, when you were elected in November of 2014, you were both the owner of Raintree Multimedia and a long-haul truck driver for Millis Transfer. But the bio on your repdiamond.com website makes no mention of your trucking career, which is a glaring omission to anyone who remembers the 2014 campaign in which you touted yourself as Trucker Russ. Your bio also makes no mention of the fact that you're married to your lovely wife, Beth. Now, you have openly criticized your opponent, saying she lacks attention to detail, citing her mailers going out to households outside of the 102, and yet your own legislative website is missing important details about you. Is the criticism fair, then, about attention to detail?
Well, regarding my truck driving career, it wasn't a career at all. It was only a year and a half, and it was only a temporary thing. I didn't drive truck for that long. It wasn't a career for me. I was a career businessman. I mean, I was in business for myself. Before that, I worked in a manufacturing facility in Lebanon for 7 years, and I was a musician as well. Those are the major points. I just figured you don't have to feature everything. Look, my bio on when I first was elected as a legislator, they had us listed in some official things as single or married, and I thought that was inappropriate, because I didn't think that the legislative website was a dating site, where people would go to see if people were single or married. So, I love being married to Beth. We've been married for 4 years. And, if that's an omission I need to add to my bio on my website for my legislative duties, that's fine. And I'll update that. That's not a problem.
All right, very good. Thank you. Now let's hear from Director Moyer. You've advertised yourself heavily as a pastor's wife, mom of 2 young boys, retired MRI, X-ray technologist. The mom comment is easily verifiable. I've seen the photos of your precious boys. But your opponent has criticized your use of the other 2 terms, saying your husband is a school bus driver and hasn't worked as a pastor for several years. Also, he says you're too young to have retired from anything and instead chose to leave your profession to homeschool your boys. Why not advertise yourself as a bus driver's wife who chose to stay home and raise her kids? Are you lying to voters in order to give yourself more credibility and gravitas?
No, I am telling the truth. My husband is a pastor, and he's been a pastor for 30 years in the Brethren faith. The majority of the time is the Church of the Brethren, and now he's ordained with the Covenant Brethren Church. I think it is outrageous that someone would claim that a person is not an ordained pastor and is not a pastor just because they don't have a full-time pastorate. There are many ways to have a pastorate, and being a full-time minister is only one of them. They have ministers who are Sunday school teachers, who are deacons, and that is my husband right now. Not every pastor gets a pay, especially in the Brethren Church. And he is a pastor, and he has also always been a school bus driver, as he has been a pastor. So he's both, and I've never actually said that he's not. And being retired means that you cease from working. I had a long career in radiology.
Thank you very much. Any rebuttal?
Sure. Look, when somebody says, nobody's ever questioned whether my opponent's husband is an ordained pastor or not. But when you claim that you're a pastor's wife, you're putting imagery in people's mind of somebody who sits in the front pew every Sunday listening to her husband and who works diligently at home to make sure that her husband can fulfill his pastoral duties. Maybe she leads the children's choir at the church. She's the first lady of the church when you think of the pastor's wife. The fact of the matter is her husband does not have a permanent church. So running around and proclaiming that you're a pastor's wife is only a way for someone to say, I'm a little bit more pious than everyone else, and you should elevate me above everyone else as well.
Rebuttal?
Yes. So as I meet in door knock in the 102nd District, I met a lady in Jackson Township, and when I told her just how I introduced myself here, she immediately said, I'm a pastor's wife too, and then told me that her husband had passed away 4 years ago. So under Russ Diamond's logic, she shouldn't have said that she was a pastor's wife, because her husband is not living here anymore and is not working as a pastor. That makes no sense whatsoever. She's a pastor's wife. I'm a pastor's wife. I actually do lead the children's choir. I've taught Sunday school. I've played the organ in the past. I am with my husband, whatever ministry God puts him into, and no man can take that away.
All right, very good. Thank you. We'll move on here. Next question, and Director Moyer, you will answer first. Please define the term Republicrat, which you've called your opponent throughout this campaign, and explain why you're not one and he is. And please give examples.
So a Republicrat is someone who is registered Republican but tends to lean to the Democrat side. Unfortunately, we have seen that with Russ Diamond, and that was with Act 77. Act 77 ushered in 50 days of no excuse mail-in ballots, and as a politician, he was on there telling everyone and encouraging his people to vote for it because it was a perfect example of how they all came together. He has never said that we should get rid of it. He continually advocates for it and did in HB 1300. And once drop boxes and satellite offices, he has voted for that. And as a conservative Republican who's never ran as anything but a conservative Republican, which unfortunately he's ran into other things, we need to stand on principle, and that is why he's a Republicrat.
Very good. Thank you. Representative Diamond, are you a Republicrat? And if you're not, what term would you use for yourself and your opponent?
Well, it's amazing that my opponent loves to throw around the term Republicrat, and rhino. And to define that, she's used two votes that I made in Harrisburg that were exactly the same as her hero, Doug Mastriano, who is funding her campaign to the tune of $35,000. I don't see how she can criticize me for those votes when he made the exact same votes. In fact, yesterday I got a mailer from Doug Mastriano criticizing me for my vote on House Bill 1300, which was, he voted for the bill. So it's ridiculous to me. And look, when my opponent first appeared here with you after she announced, she closed her argument by saying she wants unity, not division in the Republican Party. Yet just the other day, when she was touting the endorsement from somebody else I beat in a primary election, she said, I'm going to go to Harrisburg to drain the swamp of rhinos. You cannot go to Harrisburg and get anything done if you're going to start a civil war rather than getting along with all the Republicans that are there.
All right, very good. Thank you. Any rebuttal, Director Moyer?
So first off, Doug Mastriano is not the state representative of the 102nd District. You are, Russ Diamond. And so we all need to be accountable for our votes. You need to be accountable for Act 77, for HB 1300, for the reason why we have that shed that is the satellite office in front of the municipal building that the majority of the constituents in this district do not want. We need accountability, and that is one of the reasons why I'm running. You need to own up to your vote, and you voted to be with the Democrats and to keep 50 days of no excuse mail-in ballots.
Very good. Any response?
Sure. Look, of course I voted for House Bill 1300. It was a Republican initiative to fix everything that's wrong with Pennsylvania's election code. It included voter ID. It included making sure that if there are drop boxes, that every county would be treating every voter equally. In other words, you would have as many drop boxes as population allows, depending on the population of your county. It was the only, we couldn't legislate getting rid of drop boxes out. We couldn't manage even the Republican votes to do that. You have to do what gets done. It included voter ID. It was the bill that Tom Wolf vetoed. And again, her hero, Doug Mastriano, voted for it as well. Yet she's taking $35,000 from him to try to beat me in a primary election. I mean, it's hypocritical. And this is how she's been all along, since she first decided to run against me, is hypocritical about my legislative record when others who are supporting her have the exact same legislative record.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Can I say something?
All right, we'll give you 30 extra seconds. Go.
So I believe what President Calvin Coolidge has said, that sometimes it's better to stop a bad bill than to pass a good one. Just because it had voter ID in it does not mean that makes it a good bill and that you should have voted for it. It had other stuff that your constituents did not want, and that's why we need better representation.
Very good.
Can you give her more time to list the things that my constituents didn't want that she just mentioned?
I'm sorry. Let's if you want to rebut something, I'll give you 30 extra seconds.
She does this quite often where she says he does stuff or he did that, but she never actually lists them. It's kind of like the metrics that she has for being a rhino or a Republican. She can't actually list them so that everybody else can be compared to the same. Those are just names that some Republicans like to call other Republicans because they don't like those people or they have sour grapes like my opponent does.
All right, very good. Next question, and Representative Diamond, you go first. Well, we're going to continue. First of all, a point of clarification, just for the listeners and Director Moyer. The shed is actually in the back of the municipal building. You said it's in the front. It's in the back parking lot.
I apologize.
Yeah, it just for point of clarity. Yeah, that they call that the main entrance.
Thank
it's not.
you.
Everybody knows it's the back
right?
entrance.
Yes.
But there you go.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, Representative Diamond, your question. According to Lebanon County Elections Director. Oh, one other point. I do have paper here for you to jot notes and a pen if you want to use that. We don't, however, use prepared notes except in the beginning, the opening and the closing. So I would appreciate if you could close your notebook there. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Representative Diamond, according to Lebanon County Elections Director Sean Drasher, some 8,000 registered Democrats and Republicans in our county requested a no-excuse mail-in ballot for Tuesday's election, the majority being Republican. And in rough numbers, 45 ballots have already been returned, with Republicans leading that metric as well. And Mr. Drasher also reports there's been a significantly higher percentage rate of return at the manned shed and drop box currently in use at the courthouse than any previous elections in which the drop box was in use but not staffed. If ruby red Republican voters in Lebanon County are embracing the no-excuse mail-in ballots, early voting, and using a ballot drop box, can Act 77 really be all that bad?
Oh, here's the thing. People are choosing to use this method of voting. They no longer trust the mail, okay? And as far as, how you deliver that ballot back to the courthouse, the facility they have now, it's manned. It's way better than an unmanned drop box. It really is. It's an improvement. Well, now look, you can say all day long that you don't like mail-in voting and you want to get rid of it, but apparently some Republican voters have embraced it. And look, my opponent wants to say it's unconstitutional. Well, then she's saying that those people are voting illegally, and she should renounce accepting any of those votes for her vote total if she thinks they're voting illegally. I mean, folks are voting, Republicans are voting by mail. I will take those votes, and if they want to return them in person to a human being at the facility that the county set up, those votes are legitimate to me.
All right, very good. Director Moyer, you're shaking your head furiously. Is there something wrong with Act 77 if so many Republicans are using it, returning the ballot, going to that shed drop box with the personnel there? Is that so bad?
Well, yes, because it is unconstitutional. The Commonwealth Court saw that it was unconstitutional. He voted for an unconstitutional bill and continues to advocate for something that's unconstitutional and is seen as a bad bill. So look, Act 77 ushered in 50 days of no-excuse mail-in ballots. We did not have an erosion in confidence of our voting system until that was voted in. And he is actually, if you go back, wavered back and forth and said, oh, it is unconstitutional. And then he's gone and said, well, now it's constitutional because of the PA State Supreme Court says so. And I found it interesting that when I started talking about Act 77, and I did my video out there in front of the shed and talked about his votes, he then took off of his website advocating for people to get a no-excuse mail-in ballot.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Representative Diamond?
Sure. I took...
You don't have to. I mean...
absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
First, I took the option for people to apply for a mail-in ballot off my website because the time was running out. And because of the mail services, the time was running out. So it's only logical to not invite them to apply for a mail-in ballot when it's becoming too late. Look, the stance that my opponent makes that this is unconstitutional, first, underscores her complete lack of understanding of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which does not prohibit anywhere the General Assembly from creating a new method of voting. Just like, and look, if she believes that, that's fine. But then she should also renounce her position as a school board director, because the Pennsylvania Constitution does not specifically say we can create school districts or school boards. She should renounce that position. It also illustrates her misunderstanding of the Pennsylvania judicial system. The Commonwealth Court is a lower court, and at the time what they ruled, they were obligated to follow previous Supreme Court precedent. Look, the Supreme Court reversed the precedent, just like they did in Dobbs that overturned Roe v. Wade. So if she doesn't like that the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania can do that, then she should also renounce the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade. Complete lack of understanding of our Constitution and our judicial system in Pennsylvania.
I gave Representative Diamond 30 seconds. I'll give you 30 additional seconds.
So Commonwealth Court is seen to be more conservative leaning. So, and they go by the law, which he just actually said they go by the law. Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, he wanted that to change how the judges are made for that, and because they're not represented the whole state, they're more left leaning. People don't trust that. So you need to start bringing back the trust to our voters, and unfortunately, I'm not even hearing that at the moment.
Very good.
Again, not even addressing her lack of understanding of the Pennsylvania Constitution, or the fact that the Commonwealth Court is a lower court. It's a lower court. You can appeal from the Commonwealth Court to the Supreme Court, whether you like the way they rule or not.
In other words, the buck stops at the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, they have the final say. We can change the people on the Supreme Court. That's fine.
Okay.
But they have the final say, and that's constitutional as well.
And to that, you say what?
Bottom line, the buck stops at state representatives who voted for something that people don't want.
But when any issue is challenged in court through the various court branches and finally gets before the Supreme Court and they make a ruling, do you respect the ruling that the Supreme Court made as being the final decision about whatever the issue is that is before them?
If the facts show that it's unconstitutional, then we need to go with the facts. And it's seen as a bad bill. The legislature put in a bad bill. He blames it before that the courts changed the bill that they put in. Well, courts don't change. Legislators should have put it in the first place.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. It is 9:27 here at the all-new 99.7 Wilbur Radio. This is our Republican candidate debate featuring the two candidates on the ballot in the 102nd Legislative District, five-term incumbent Representative Russ Diamond and Elko School Director Rachel Moyer. Next question goes to Director Moyer? I believe so. Latest F&M poll shows that 62% of registered voters believe recreational marijuana should be legalized in Pennsylvania. Invariably, some of those voters live in the 102nd District. Where do you stand on the legalization of adult use recreational marijuana? And if you personally oppose it, but a majority of your constituents want it, which way will you vote?
I oppose recreational marijuana. It is morally wrong. It leads society into more crime, and it should not be legalized. That's where I stand.
And if the majority of your voters want it and you are their representative, how will you vote?
I will vote no for it.
Very good. Representative Diamond.
Sure. On this, look, a lot of people have talked to me about this topic, and I'm a hard no on adult use or recreational marijuana, however you want to term it. The reason I'm a hard no right now is because we made some promises to some patients with serious medical conditions 8 years ago with Act 16 of 2016, the medical cannabis bill, which I, as a freshman, was heavily involved in getting through the House. The crown jewel of that bill was some clinical research, which we have not seen any results from that yet. There are a lot of other problems with our medical program. And look, the same people who would end up being in the business of recreational marijuana or that sort of thing are the people who are in the business of the medical cannabis right now. So I'm not willing to go any further with that particular line of legalization until we fulfill the promises we made to patients. We owe them.
Okay.
To make sure that we fulfill the promises to them at all. So I'm a hard no.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
What I'm hearing is that he's a no now until he gets what he wants on medical marijuana. So when you get what you want on medical marijuana, people need to hear that then he'll consider recreational marijuana. Like that's what I'm hearing, and that's not good, because marijuana can lead to addiction and can lead to other drug use. I've seen it in my own family. That's another reason why I'm a strong no.
Very good. And I did want to ask you before you give your rebuttal, though, the second part of my question. At this juncture, if recreational marijuana comes before you for a vote, and the majority of the 102 constituents that you speak with want it, will you vote their way or your way?
Here's the timeline of events. We fixed what's wrong with the medical cannabis program, and unlike, look, my opponent says she's hearing something from me. No, I'm telling you that we have to fix what's wrong with the medical cannabis program. Then I'm willing to at least talk about whether we do adult use or recreational use, because there's a lot of other things that go involved with that. First of all, is the technology for an officer to pull over somebody that's driving and say, you're under the influence and you're not. That technology is not available. We don't have the equivalent of a breathalyzer or a blood alcohol test to make sure that's true. There are a lot of other things that are involved in that conversation, including taking the temperature of my constituents at that time. I mean, I'm not worried about what they're saying now. I want to know at that time, when we get to that point where we fix what we need to fix with the medical program, then I'm willing to figure out what my constituents think about adult use. I'm willing to see what technology is available for law enforcement at that time.
Okay.
And then we can have that conversation. And I might still be opposed to it at that time as well.
Okay, very good. I do want to ask a follow-up. I don't have it written, so I'm just going to freeform it here. Director Moyer, are you a proponent of medical cannabis for patients that have any number of different ailments and illnesses for which they derive relief from medical cannabis?
I have heard from the medical cannabis advocates, and it does help people. That is a little different. However, you need to have certain parameters in place, which we do.
Very good. And I think we all know that you are an advocate for medical marijuana.
I am absolutely one. And again, some of the promises that were made to patients 8 years ago have not been fulfilled, and that should be our focus.
Very good. We'll move on in our candidate debate. Our next question answered first by Representative Diamond. And Representative Diamond, your opponent has criticized you for only getting one major piece of legislation signed into law, your 2016 industrial hemp bill. She says it's brought no revenue to our state nor Lebanon County. This is a two-part question. First, what's your response to her claims? And secondly, why haven't you gotten more pieces of legislation passed?
Well, first of all, it's not the only piece of legislation I've gotten passed. Perhaps she forgets about the bill I got passed during COVID that protected taxpayers from having to foot the bill for getting solicited by the Department of Aging for SNAP benefits and other welfare benefits when they were dead for 16 months. That was a bill that was a model for getting dead people off the voter rolls as well, which is a bill I have pending right now. Perhaps she forgets what I did for Fort Indian Town Gap to help them move a proposed veterans outreach facility from inside the current security fence to outside to a place that had better ADA access. That bill was the last bill that Tom Wolf signed into law. Look, not everything you do, or Ronald Reagan once said, it's unlimited. the amount of good you can do when you don't care who gets the credit for it. And I've done lots of things that other people have gotten included they've got rolled up in other bills, rolled up in budgets. So, you have to look at the full record of the legislative job.
Gotcha. And Director Moyer. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to change it a little bit for you. Two-part question. First, what's your response to what Representative Diamond has said? And secondly, why haven't you, what makes you think as a freshman State House member, you'd be more effective in getting legislation passed than Representative Diamond?
Well, first off, the only major bill that he's passed into law that he has touted the most is industrial hemp. And like I said, it has not brought the revenue that it should. And he even had a video with Secretary Redding during the farm show about it. And they were talking about how it hasn't done what they thought it should. So we need to have more effectiveness in there. We need to have someone that has regular office hours that's in there all the time, where you can come in and actually meet with your state rep and talk to them and have accountability. Unfortunately, we don't really have that at the moment. What was the second part?
Second part, what makes you think as a freshman state lawmaker you'd be more effective?
Well, first off, like what I said, I would be there for the people. I would be in the office every day. And I would be actively working like I am as a school board director, and be at every meeting that I can, and to get a pulse for the people. That's how you be effective, and work with other conservative Republicans to get things done.
Response, Representative Diamond?
I'm glad that she's seen at least one of my conversations with Secretary Redding on industrial hemp. What she hasn't seen is the constant communication I am in with the Department of Agriculture. And what she doesn't understand is how difficult it is for a crop, which was illegal for 80 years, to catch up and develop a brand new market and compete with other crops that have experienced technological and production advances for 80 years while that one was illegal. She said something about my office hours. I have regular office hours. Our office is open from 9 to 4:30 every single day of the week in Jonestown. And if you want to come in and you want to meet with your legislator, all you have to do is call and make an appointment. That's all you have to do. I mean, and we take plenty of walk-in people, too. We've got staff there who can help them with whatever issue they have. And quite frankly, my opponent has my cell phone number, and she's yet to call me personally about any of these issues she's talking about today, which is one of her big flaws.
Response, Director Moyer?
So when I'm talking about having regular office hours, I'm talking about actually being in the office, because there have been times where you go in, he's not there. So that's what I'm talking about, actually being there for the people. And I have talked to you about stuff, Russ. I mean, it's been ongoing.
Stuff.
Yes.
Stuff. Nothing's particular. Look.
You want to talk about something particular? You advocated for.
You were not.
Wait a second. You're on, this is her time, actually. Go.
You advocated for our conservative group to get Republicans hooked on mail-in ballots. That's when you separated, because we wouldn't do it for you.
All right.
So what she's talking about is what I advocated for is for conservative groups to go out and get Republicans who don't regularly vote in person to actually get them to vote by mail, because we're behind in Pennsylvania. 400,000 voters down to the Democrats. So the only way we're going to win elections is to convince those Republicans who don't show up at the polls regularly to vote. And if getting them to vote by mail is a way to get them to vote, I'm all for it, because we need to retake the House, which she helped us lose last year. We need to retain the Senate. We need to take the U.S. Senate, and we need to gain back the presidency.
I want to ask a question. I'll give you each 30 seconds to respond.
Okay.
Do you gauge the effectiveness of a state lawmaker by the number of bills that they get passed?
It's not just bills. It's about how they are with the people. Do they have a pulse of what the people want? Are they in the community? Are they active? So bills is part of it. Yes, you need to be passing legislation and make sure that it gets signed into law and that it represents our conservative constituency. But you also need to be available for everyone and not just a few.
Very good. And Representative Diamond, 30 seconds. Is effectiveness as a lawmaker the number of bills that you get passed?
Absolutely not, especially as a conservative lawmaker, because we generally like less government, not more. It's amazing that she wants me to be in my office all the time, but yet she wants me to be in the community. Some of the times I'm not in my office. I'm actually out in the community, like I was at Richland Library yesterday. You know, I was out there visiting the library. So I can't be in two places at both times. Some of the biggest things I do in Harrisburg is playing defense and making sure that bad things don't happen. And you don't get a plaque on the wall for that. You just don't get it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's move on here. Our next question in our 102nd District Republican candidate debate, live here on the all-new 99.7 Wilbur Radio and 1270 AM WLBR. This is a question for both of you, a two-part question. And Rachel Moyer, you answer first. Do you believe climate change is a natural phenomenon or man-caused? And do you favor Pennsylvania joining RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative?
No, we should not be joining RGGI. We have a wonderful, amazing properties here with natural gas, with oil that we need to be using, and we're not. And we need to be using what God has given our great state. And we need to be, you talked about climate change. I don't believe in climate change. I believe that God controls everything. He controls the climate. And we are given this resource that we need to be taken care of, and that is why I would not want to enter RGGI.
Very good. Thank you. Representative Diamond, do you believe climate change is a natural phenomenon or man-caused? And do you favor Pennsylvania joining RGGI?
I believe climate change is mostly a natural phenomenon. There may be some impact from man-made, pollution and that sort of thing, but I think it's minimal. Pennsylvania should absolutely not join RGGI, because all RGGI is a tax increase on every single person who uses energy in Pennsylvania. I've fought against it. I've voted against it. I've railed against it. We should not be part of RGGI at all, period. End of story.
Very good. Thank you. Do you favor the alternative clean fuels and continuing to invest in development of clean energy sources, solar, wind, those, for example, coming to mind? Rachel Moyer.
There are some farms that use that. So, yes, and, across the state, there are some school districts looking into solar. So, yes, like I said before, we need to look into all avenues that the Lord has given us, and those are some different technologies that he has. So, yes.
Representative Diamond.
I'm all for developing all sorts of new energy sources that make Pennsylvania and the United States absolutely independent. The problem is that we're trying to focus too much, government is trying to focus too much, quote unquote, investment, taxpayer dollars, on technologies that are not yet mature enough to gain private investment on their own. I don't think that's a good idea. I think when those technologies, when the solar is so effective that somebody's just willing to invest in it, or the wind is so effective and reliable that somebody's willing to invest private funds into it, it's going to happen. And look, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. We need to have a very diverse energy, collection in Pennsylvania, so we can draw from whatever we need to draw from, depending on markets.
Very good. Thank you. Our next question, and Representative Diamond, you will answer first. You've made it a campaign issue, Rachel Moyer's involvement as an Elko School Board member, bringing forth a policy regarding transgender students and bathroom use. You say her involvement in passing the policy opens up the district to a lawsuit from woke parents of transgendered students. Given the mental health crisis plaguing adolescents in our country, what's your beef with giving students who identify as the opposite sex a place to go to the bathroom or change their clothes for gym class?
The beef is that my opponent has actually put transgender ideology into official school policy. And what that does is it sets up the Elko School District for potential lawsuit for somebody who wants to be a boy who wants to play girl sports, or some adult who attends a concert, a basketball game, a football game, to sue the school because they don't have a proper facility for that person to use the restroom or that sort of thing. The other part that's a problem with this policy is that the policy allows the student, a child, to claim that they are not what God made them. Children are not competent to make that decision. Nothing in the policy includes parental involvement, requires parental involvement. So what's happened at Elko is that they've assigned the administrator in charge of every building to determine which bathrooms are separated by biological sex and which bathrooms are separated by, quote unquote, gender identity. So under Pennsylvania law, they have to be separated by biological sex. And months before she put this policy in place, she and another school board director told me at a Republican County committee meeting that they were going to adhere to Pennsylvania law. Somehow, she lost track of that conservative track and got influenced by the liberals and put this transgender language into school policy, which now exposes the school district for lawsuits in the future.
All right, Director Moyer, your response, you have a minute 40.
So last year when we had this come before us, we did not have a policy. And we had outside consultation come in. We talked with our own solicitor. We had forums where, public comment. We had tons of people come in and give their view of what the board should go in which direction. And we protected biological sex. We put up boundaries, boys and boys, girls and girls. Now, as a parent, I have fought for parental rights as a school board director. And I can't be taking away the rights of another parent, because then I'll be taking away the rights of my own. The policy does have in there that if it seems that they are not what they're trying to say, that we can have them in written form tell us from a parent, a family member, or a medical doctor that they have a gender identity. So for his claim to say that parents are not informed is incorrect. Pennsylvania law says they especially need to in any health situation if they're under 14. So that is incorrect.
Where does it say in the policy about parents or doctors advising?
Consistently asserted. It is in there.
It says, it says, but here's what it says. We'll just stop with the timing. Facilities designated for use based on gender identity may be utilized by members of that gender based on the individual's gender identity as consistently asserted. No person shall enter a facility that is designated for one gender unless she/he is a member of that gender based on the individual's gender identity as consistently asserted. In any district facility that is for use based on gender identity, in which a person may be in a state of undress in the presence of others, school personnel shall provide private changing areas for use if requested. No person shall enter these private changing areas unless the individual is a member of the designated gender according to gender identity as consistently asserted.
And you had to keep going. It's more into the policy. It's not just that one part.
Okay.
See, this is the thing.
That's the facilities usage.
This is the thing and it's in there.
Okay. All right.
And see, you have it highlighted. So are you
No,
using
this-
Russ Diamond's
this is-
version?
I'm just gathering the information because I didn't know what
you gathered information from
I'm
him,
asking
not
you-
the career politician.
I'm asking you to explain the policy then. So it does
And
say
I am
it talks
explaining
about
policy.
doctors
Yes, it does.
or orders
if you
and
go
such.
in there and look at it,
All right.
and if you look at the Lebanon Daily News, they came in July and August in 2023. Look at those articles. I want everyone to look at them. He describes exactly what the policy is.
Are you caving to woke ideology?
Absolutely not. And there were conservative parents there in the audience when we did this.
Okay. Representative
I
Zimmerman.
believe conservative parents need to actually look up Policy 253 and see what it actually says, because it completely, absolutely says nobody needs any medical approval or any other approval to consider themselves not what God made them. They can, a student all by themselves can come to the Elko administration and say, I am not what God made me, and you need to provide me a facility. Further,
So if the parent of that student comes and says, my biologically born son identifies as a girl, is that okay?
Look, that's not even addressed in this policy. Parents are not addressed in this policy at all. A student, any student of the Elko School District can present themselves as something as they were not created to be by God. And Elko now has to provide them a facility. What we don't know is in which buildings have the administrator designated bathrooms divided by gender identity. And now I think it's going to be a lot fewer. And if that bathroom is all the way across the school, now that's a basis for a lawsuit that you're not treating each child equally, because one kid has to go all the way across the school to go to the bathroom. I don't know about you, Laura. When I got to go, I got to go. And I don't want to have to run all the way across the school facility. So we don't know in which building, in Elko, which bathrooms are which. How many are there?
Are the bathrooms denoted for gender identity or biological boys, biological girls?
They're biological boys, biological girls. You have to ask for an accommodation, and there is an AR that says what happens in each building. That's in the policy.
What is an AR?
An administrative regulation.
Okay.
So our administrators, according to their building, they get to assign what is what, where people go. And all of them at the moment are biological sex. Okay?
So
That's
the boy that identifies as a girl, goes by a girl's name, wears girl's clothing, but was born a male, they do or don't have a bathroom they can use?
They have to request it.
Look.
And the parent has to be involved. Parents are always involved
Okay.
in Elko.
Okay.
What I find amazing...
Can you get a little bit closer to the mic? Thank you.
What I find amazing is that Northern Lebanon has this similar policy. He called them and talked to them and railed on them because they had the same one as us. Is he mentioning Northern Lebanon's policy? Typical politician.
I was asked a question. May I have the time to answer?
Sure,
Go ahead.
politician. Go ahead.
I spoke with two members of the Northern Lebanon School Board about a similar policy that they have. The difference here is that none of them are claiming they are more conservative than Russ Diamond and can make a more conservative state legislator than Russ Diamond. My opponent is claiming that she's more conservative than me, yet she has adopted this policy. So maybe she can take some time here to tell us which facilities in which Elko school district, which ones are gender identity, and how do you know that the next administrator you hire is not going to go in and say they're all gender identity based and not biological sex based?
You can't do that because the policy says you have to have biological sex facilities.
Mm-hmm. So you can only have one for boys, one for girls, and all the rest will be for gender identity.
Incorrect.
That's what your policy says.
No, it does not
yes,
at all.
It is. Folks,
And
please,
it would be interesting
for yourself,
that you would
look
say
up
that.
Policy 253 under the Elko School District. Read it for yourself. It is a word salad of boilerplate crap that came from the PSBA.
No, PSBA has
You claim that the Family Council and the
This is
Independence
weird.
Law Center
even know what
have
you're
their
talking
stamp
about.
approval on this. But you know that they called you and said, please remove the reference to us from your Facebook post. And you refused to do so because they called me right after they called you.
Is that true?
Here's what he's claiming. PSBA gave us that. PSBA has no policy at all on this issue. Why? Because really it should be the state legislature doing it. You refuse. And then it should be down to the local then. We have to decide what is good for our constituents. Northern Lebanon has it as sex assigned at birth. ELCO says biological sex. How is biological sex woke? It's not. An independence law did come in and give us tips on how to hold the moral line. It is unfortunate that he brings our children from our district into this and is using it for his political game because he's a typical career politician. I am not a politician. I am here for the people, and I am going to respect parental rights, and that is what this policy is.
Okay,
biological sex.
I do want to ask another question here, and this will be Rachel Moyer answering first. We'll try to regain some semblance of the format here, but thank you. That has been certainly one of the biggest issues, I think, of this campaign between you two, this ELCO bathroom policy. I do want to ask this question, though, Director Moyer. If I can find it now, darn it. What will you support and how will you vote if the issue of abortion access in Pennsylvania comes before the state house? Are there any exceptions that you will tolerate? 60 seconds.
I believe that life should be respected and that death should not be glorified. As a former retired X-ray CT MRI technologist, I have seen babies born at 22 weeks. 24 weeks for a Pennsylvania law for abortion is way too high. So we need to work to lower that. We need to get it down to a heartbeat bill. And I would sponsor a heartbeat bill. For exceptions, the life of the mother. I mean, if you have an ectopic pregnancy, you should be able to go in and get some medical help. I see that as needing a medical emergency. That is not an abortion.
Very good. Representative Diamond?
I am proud of my 100% pro-life voting record in Harrisburg, and I will continue to be 100% pro-life in the future. My opponent would like you to think that she, in her heart, is more pro-life than I am, but that can't be further from the truth. And if she, again, had ever bothered to pick up her cell phone and call me and have a conversation with me, she would understand that. But since she didn't, I will do that right here, right now, today. Ma'am, you are blessed with two beautiful sons. And God bless you and your husband for doing that. What you don't know is that my only child was taken from me by abortion. So please stop going around trying to insinuate that you will ever be more pro-life than I am, okay? So I will never waver on my pro-life stance in Harrisburg. However, there is a practical understanding that you have to have, that we have divided government in Pennsylvania, and that 3 generations of women have grown up believing, I don't agree with it, but they believe that they have a fundamental right to kill their unborn child. I don't agree with that, but we have to get around that. I want to live in a world where there are no abortions, none. But I don't think we're going to get that there legislatively in Pennsylvania.
All right, so are there exceptions you will tolerate?
Look, life of the mother, I'm absolutely 100% okay with that but it's got to be strictly life of the mother. We can't just say, oh, the mother is sad, so that's threatening her life, that sort of thing. Rape and incest, I certainly understand those arguments. But look, the vast majority of abortions are not for life of the mother or rape or incest. The vast majority are a manner of birth control that people are using, and that's what I oppose.
Director Moyer, are there any, you said that life of the mother, what about rape or incest?
I know, have some friends actually that were raped, and I have one that was the product of a rape. Should they have been aborted? The answer is no, because life is precious. It starts at conception. God gives us life, and we need to respect that. I also believe that there should not be, and I'm not for abortion, but there is no but. We need to fight for the unborn. We need to preserve life because life is precious and we need to respect it.
All right, very good. Candidates, thank you very much for your time. We are just about at the top of the hour. We're going to go over just a few minutes because we got in a few minutes late. But I do thank you very much for coming, answering the questions, and having a civil debate. Certainly differences between you, but a civil debate nevertheless. It's time now for our closing statements. Again, in this instance, you may use prepared notes or a speech, and we're going to start with Representative Russ Diamond for your closing.
Well, thank you for hosting this conversation, Laura. This tale of two candidates is a distinct contrast. On one hand, you have an experienced conservative leader who's lived here all his life and has consistently stood up for Lebanon County values. The people of the 102nd District trust me because I've spoken the truth when it wasn't easy to do, both before I was elected and after. On the other hand, you have a relative newcomer in the county whose motivation for running is sour grapes and sour grapes alone. Her lack of understanding of our county, our state, and the legislative process has been on full display today. It's been both an honor and a privilege to serve as Lebanon County's voice in Harrisburg. As the second fastest growing county in the state, we deserve to have an experienced legislator on the House Republican leadership team in Harrisburg. A vote for Russ Diamond is a vote for Lebanon County's future. I humbly ask for your support and your vote on Tuesday, April 23rd.
Thank you. Turn on my mic might help. Thank you very much, Representative Diamond. And now with closing remarks, School Director Rachel Moyer.
So we need elected officials who continue to be the people's voice in Harrisburg. And as state representative, you will see me strongly advocate for the right to life, school choice, and parental rights, especially for homeschool. We need to cut the regulations down, and we need to make it easier to have school choice and not harder. And I will never stop fighting for the restoration of election integrity in the 102nd District. The faith and confidence has been eroded, and I will never stop being the people's voice and getting that confidence back. Together, we can achieve what the citizens of the 102nd District expect, and that is good, effective, conservative government. We can restore integrity back to the 102nd District. I hope to earn your vote for state representative of the 102nd District, and I thank you all for praying for me, and thank you, Laura, for having this today.
Thank you very much. Candidates, I do appreciate your participation here today. And with that, we're going to wrap up our candidate debate here at Lebanon's News Leader, the all-new 99.7 Wilbur Radio. I will remind you, listeners, as if you didn't already know, primary election day is Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, April 23rd. In-person voting will commence at 7 a.m. The polls will remain open until 8 p.m. If you're in a line at 8 p.m., but you're there at your polling place, you will be allowed to vote even if it is after 8 p.m. And the manned ballot box, drop box at the Lebanon Municipal Building is available today until 4:30, Monday 8:30 to 4:30, and then on election day it will be available from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And on that, have a great weekend. Be well. Back at you Monday here on Talk of the Town, and Middays with Jim McKay comes your way right after this break.